All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another enthralling episode of One of Us Knows What They Are Talking About, and the other one is you. That's what we're here. That's what we're here to talk about. So this is where we explore various topics, primarily in the legal world, about some frustrations and misperceptions there are when people who are not experts in a field, possibly not licensed or qualified or educated in a certain field, but think that they know better than you. And this is an opportunity to correct that. So today is very exciting because when we first conceived of this podcast, we always envisioned having guests because we know that we're not alone in the estate planning and probate world of the challenges of people thinking they know better by going to Google or asking strangers on social media. That there are other industries and other professionals that have the same sort of issues that we do. So our very first guest for episode 10
Wow.
is someone near and dear to our hearts, a personal friend of mine as well, Robin McCoy. So Robin, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, Lori. I'm so happy to be your first official guest. I had no idea. My name is Robin McCoy. I am a Texas realtor with Keller Williams. Been practicing real estate here in Dallas for just over 16 years.
Right on. So I know that I've been on your podcast, and I know that you are as equally passionate in your industry. I would also say in mine, because I know it really drives you insane when people don't have a proper estate plan. Yeah. We know that a lot of realtors, we love them, get very frustrated because what are you trying to do? You're trying to get to the closing, because that's where the magic happens. That's where people's dreams are made. You hand over the keys, the real keys, and then the big figurative keys that people give.
In the photograph and all of those things.
All the things. And there are lots of things that can throw that into a lot of issues. And we deal with that, whether it's a home that doesn't have a clear title because mom didn't probate when dad died and passed away, and like all of these things. So we deal with that a lot. But I wanted to start when it comes to homeowners in particular, a few things in our world that we deal with a great deal. And that the first one is that a lot of people do not realize that in Texas, a home does not automatically go to a spouse. Now, if you want to get super technical about this, you want to nerd out, this is called joint tenancy. Joint tenancy with what's called rights of survivorship. Texas does not have that. So hear me now, believe me later, it is absolutely a fact that we just don't have that. So, for example, if you're married and you buy a home together, if both names are on the title, whatever, if one of you passes away, it doesn't just automatically go to the spouse. That doesn't mean the spouse won't be the one who by law would inherit it. It just means that there's going to be steps. What do steps mean? It's really a nice way of saying money and time delays in order to make sure that the surviving and a judge and a judge.
Don't forget him. Her.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So that's one thing that we battle against. And I'm sure, Robin, have you run into this in your practice where people don't realize that, and it can cause a lot of issues where we can't get to the closing?
Often. And it's, and this is always at a time you're dealing with an estate that there's, a couple other things going on. It's very emotional. There's a lot of things that happen. And in fact, people can do everything what they think is right and still miss that final step of probating the will that does exist that, she is it happened to my own in-laws. He died over 10 years ago. He had a will. They didn't probate that will. She lived on. She died a couple of years ago with a trust. We had no idea that will hadn't been probated until we're getting it into title. And then because he was gone for over 10 years, his will was I don't know if you would use the word invalid, you would tell me that, but we still had to do an heirship. And I'm like, and so there's things that come up all the time. I had one where the husband was not liked at all. The house was hers before, house was hers before she married him. He was a bum. Nobody liked him. He was never on the house. He was a raging alcoholic. He died. Well, we couldn't get it. It took us extra time and lost the seller money because he didn't have a will, and we couldn't find, the required number of people to validate his heirship because the daughter was not his daughter. Her daughter was like, I could go down to the bar where he hung out, But so, I mean, the guy's a bum and nobody liked him and nobody's going to validate his heirship.
Yeah. And what you're bringing up, it gets lost a lot. And I don't even think we talk about it enough because we just take it for granted about what a big pain in the ass it is. But when you don't have a will, or in the case, so in Texas, you brought up a good point. You have 4 years to probate a will from the date of death. Otherwise, it is presumed to be revoked. There are ways to overcome that presumption, but I can tell you they're becoming more and more difficult to overcome. And so there is a presumption that it doesn't exist. So it's a moot point, if you will. It doesn't matter.
Probate the will. You have to probate the will.
Right.
Argue with us all you want. But
so without that, you have to find at least 2 people who knew the person who passed away, who are willing to swear in an affidavit or in court that they knew the person, knew their assets, their debts, their marital history, all their kids that they did or did not want to include. And they have to be able to do that in order for the state of Texas just to go ahead and say what they deem is the distribution of assets and money. I do want to commend you on one thing, though. I don't know that we hear the term bum a lot. And so it just makes me think of one of my favorite movie quotes from Rocky. You're a bum, Rock. So I want to thank you for bringing that up. So I know you've seen that. I want to take one more point of privilege as the host of the podcast and then turn it more over into some things I know you want to address, Robin. But this is something that we see so much too. And it's with all assets, but it gets very extra triggering when it's a home. But in Texas, we are a community property state. And if a spouse passes away and they have children from a different relationship, meaning outside the marriage, then those children actually will inherit their half of the home. So we were saying a few moments ago, we don't have right of survivorship, doesn't happen automatically where a home would go to a surviving spouse. It may not happen at all. It's not uncommon for there to be, some starter marriages out there. And so if they get remarried and have children, then they're actually the one. So a lot more on that. We've probably talked about it before. We will talk about it again. It's just one of those big, big trigger points for us. Have you ever run into any of that where you've had to get children, adult or minor children, to be involved?
I have not. Fortunately, we've had to track down adult children of an ex. Let's see. She died. She had an ex-husband that died without a will, had children from another marriage. We had to track him down, found him in Baton Rouge, had to get him to sign off on everything. He just wouldn't do it. He said he would, but he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And we kept sending and he wouldn't do it. And I finally sent him a note and I said, you know what? We will all go away and leave you alone for the rest of your life if you will sign those documents. And the title company called me 20 minutes later and said, what did you do? I said, I told him we'd go away. Alone. So let's get this done and go away.
But we need to start saying to our probation.
I think we just found a new way to do this. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for your contributions. Sam and I have decided
that's what we're going to do. Checks in the mail. Sam, what did you glean from that?
Oh, I said that's just what we need to start saying to our probate clients, and like the heirs that we need to have signed documents that just ignore us for months on.
Yeah, we promise we will go away if
Look
you
away.
just sign the document.
Yeah, we actually kind
Give
of
us the information.
Well, and I've used that line just recently. I've got a client that, you know, she's got some HOA debt and things like that. And I just said, and we're trying to get a number. And I'm like, tell them you will go away. You're selling the condo. They will never have to bother you again if you'll just give us the number. We need a number.
Right. I would have never thought of the parallels that there really are to real estate and being a realtor that there is to estate planning and probate. You know, when you're a little baby lawyer and starting your own estate planning practice and probate, they tell you to seek out financial planners and CPAs and insurance folks, and they're all good and everything. But I discovered, fortunately, early on that one of the biggest missed relationships that just should go hand in hand is really estate planning probate with realtors, because there's so much. And actually, as just an aside, because I know you're passionate about this next point, Robin, is whenever I get an opportunity to speak to a group of realtors, because one of the things we fight against is, we're talking a lot about why you need to have the planning, but why you need to have a quality plan, as in not this DIY form crap. So I always ask, what do you all think of for sale by owner? And you just see like cold sweats break out. And I'm like, do you realize that is the equivalent of DIY estate planning? So can we just agree that's crap? And all the same reasons for sale by owner is a bad idea are the same reasons.
More money.
Exactly.
You're going to break a law.
And once we get there, realtors and estate planning probate firms, they're just so symbiotic. Quality ones on both sides.
Yeah. Well, because, your house is your wealth for, most people. It is the single largest asset that they own. And if you don't plan it accordingly, while you still know what you're doing, then it's all for naught later when you're gone.
Right.
And you're not leaving that wealth and that legacy to your family. You forget that it's just a house, they'll sell it. No, it's something that can, they can keep it. They can rent it. It becomes now an income stream to them. But you've got to have all those plans in place with you and the documents and the wills and the trust to make that happen on the other end after you're gone.
Yeah, I think it's one of people's biggest assets, but I think it's also one of their most emotional assets. I mean, if you got a bank account that has money sitting in it, it's important. It can do a lot of things. You want to make sure it goes to the people you want, to care for the people that you want. But a house has so many other things attached to it. I mean, that's your home, that's your safety net. There's memories. I mean, so much I mean, even in my own family, and I don't want to get too much into that, but with, on my father's side, a lot of it came down to some bad feelings about property, and about a childhood home, who got it versus a vacation home and who got it. And it sounds all, petty first world upper class problems, but it really was the emotions. That's what was triggering them, my family members in this is what was attached to all of that. Even though, yes, we were talking about some pretty valuable property in a couple different places, that really is not what was driving that. Cynthia, I think you had something.
Yes, one of the things that Robin just touched on, how it's like we have to have you. It is shocking how many times we have people who try to do these things on behalf of other people and having to go through different people to try to get to the end result. And it's so difficult to do that, especially with all the emotions at play when the person who needs to sign the dotted line doesn't necessarily want to, or they can't bring themselves to do it. I feel it's another really big piece that when selling something or planning for your death, things like that, it's people have the best intentions. It's bringing yourself to accept it or part with an object that has a lot of value.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think,
well, like you said, there's financial value and there's emotional value.
Right. Which I
And
think is probably part of what's really fun about what you do is, nothing against like financial planners. I mean, they get to, but it still comes down to dollars and cents, right? But you get to like dream with people. You get to do something that, unless you're Sam and Sarah, people have dreamt of owning a house. They have strong feelings of not. They're going to share later as to how I personally have scared them away from home ownership. It's fine. But I think something that I wasn't anticipating us talking about as much, but, Robin, we're now hearing how much you deal with it. Sam's getting all sorts of triggered by it. And that is all the finagling of getting people when someone's passed away to get you information to sign off on paperwork. And we get it a lot where people are like, well, I don't want to be involved. And we've actually been like, the way to not be involved is to sign the waiver. Sign the waiver that you're not involved.
It's in the name. It's a waiver. It's waiving your.
Yes.
It's in the name of the document.
You are involved. There's no way out.
And that's part of it too. I don't want anything to do with it. Well, guess what? This was your parents, and you are now involved.
Right.
You're involved in one way or another. And
yes.
I can't change that because you were born. And you're here.
And I'd like to change that sometimes.
People want to avoid the responsibility. They're like, no, I'm not putting my name on absolutely anything because that means I have to deal with it. It's like, it's not how this works. I promise. Can you just sign it?
Yeah.
No, then the government will know where I am. They know where I exist.
They know where you
are.
are.
For the last 20 years.
Well, I'm not going to do the face recognition on my phone because I don't want the government to have my face. Like, wait till they find out about driver's licenses.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Robin, there's a few more things I want to bring up, but go ahead and take the floor. Tell us about some of the things you come across where you know what you're talking about, but the other person obviously does not.
Well, and a lot of it does come down to the conversations you and I have had, because I've learned so much about this because of the conversations we have had, right? But it is the you have to have a seller's disclosure. We are not an attorney state. So you don't have to have an attorney involved in your transaction at all. Of course, you can choose to, but we're a title company state. We use title companies, not attorneys. So people, your Uncle Bob's cousin Mary may live in Illinois, which is an attorney state, but that's not what's happening in Texas. We get a lot of things like that, which I'm sure you do too, right? It's, well, my cousin who sold their house said, fill in the blank. Well, where are they? Well, they're in Florida. Well, that's awesome for Florida. It's not awesome for Texas. So it's things like that, people, I just want them to understand I've been doing this for a minute, and I do know people, and I understand the emotions behind things, and I understand how sometimes, and I tell people, if I make you feel uncomfortable, I'm telling you the truth. And that's what you want from me, right? You want me to tell you the truth. This is what it's going to sell for. This is what your net's going to be. This is what you owe already. So that's going to eat into this. Well, I just don't understand that. Well, because you got a mortgage. I don't know if I'm making sense, but because I feel like I'm coming from a few different directions. So you can piece all this together, right? You can piece this together into a coherent conversation, right?
Oh, no, we leave the incoherence in.
Great. Yeah. I love that.
That actually becomes Sarah's outtake as she teases the next episode.
Yeah. But, the other thing, too, is, when people, insist that the market's about to crash. Well, I'm not going to buy now because the market's going to crash. Well, all the experts that are a lot smarter than me, he's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors. He's a pretty smart dude. And every year in January, he comes and talks to this group and tells us exactly what's going to happen. And then it happens because he understands it. So interest rates are not going to drop to 3%. So everybody that is waiting for that 3% to come back. Unfortunately, that was a little moment, little bubble in time that if you got it, that's great. If you didn't, you didn't.
Do you know what Whitney Houston would call that? One moment in time.
Okay. And who is that? Wendy Houston? Or Whitney Houston?
Whitney Houston.
Oh, I thought you said Wendy Houston. And I'm like, I know of a Whitney Houston. I don't know. No, I'm sitting there trying to think if I'm supposed to know a Wendy Houston. And I don't.
Wendy Houston is a meteorologist.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
I'm kidding. I don't have any idea who that is.
I don't know either. So, and the other thing that prices are going to drop and go, we don't have the inventory for a market crash. There are more people still moving to Dallas. I think in DFW I think it was in 2023, the people that moved to Dallas were the number was the size of Mesquite. So an entire city of people moved here in 2023. That's a lot of people. That's why the market is not going to suddenly, the bottom's not going to fall out, and we're not having 2008 again. We're not. And people don't want to believe me. So they continue to rent, which is fine. If renting is what you want to do, renting is fine. However, you're going to pay somebody's mortgage. Might as well be your own.
What about, hold on.
That's a good one.
A home. However, all the things you just said.
That the market's going to crash? It's not going to. No, it's not going to. I mean, the increase of people, the increase in competition for real estate, properties, land. Well, there's always going to be competition for something that somebody wants, right? If it's popular, I mean, Taylor Swift tickets, right? How fast did those sell out? Because so many people want them. And personally, I think that's a whole lot of money to spend for a rock and roll show. But I see that it's more than a rock and roll show. It's kind of an entire event. But that being said, anything that's in demand, there's going to be more than one person that wants it. And you just have to be prepared for that. Maybe your first home, you need to understand, is maybe not your only home, your lasting home, your forever home. What happened in 2021 when, people are like, where are these people getting all this money to just throw, $50,000 at a seller to get the house? Well, they've owned a house. So now, they owe $200, they got $400. Now I've got $200,000 of unreal money. I can give a seller $50,000 and I still have $150,000 that I didn't have. Does that make sense? That's why they can do that. But they could not have done it had they not bought that first house. Because again, prices are not going to crash. They're going to continue to go up, maybe not as at 8% a year like they did, but they're going to continue to rise. Before the pandemic, it was about average of 3% a year. Prices increased. So you live somewhere 5 years, you're going to build that equity that then gives you more leverage into your next house if you choose to sell it. Or you choose to take a home equity loan and do that and rent the original house. There's lots of things you can do, but you can't do any of it unless you own it.
Yeah. Speaking of rental homes, that is something that we run into a lot. And we will talk about this in another future episode, I am sure, about protecting the asset of possibly looking at putting it into an LLC and so forth. So if you get sued from a tenant or guest of the tenant or something like that, that they can only go after the assets of the LLC. I actually saw, and I'm not necessarily recommending this, everybody's circumstances are different, but I actually saw some discussion with some estate attorneys about how you could even set up two LLCs, one for where you receive the rents and one that owns the actual home. So if they sue, so anyway, there's a lot of liability to protect yourselves. But actually, Robin, before I forget, I wanted to propose a tagline for you. And it is this: if you don't have a mortgage, your landlord has one for you.
That's it.
Yeah.
That works. They do.
There you go.
And you're going to pay it forever.
Yeah. And I do
Forever.
want to get Sarah in on this conversation. So Sarah, how many Taylor Swift concerts have you been to?
I have been to 3.
3. How many homes have you owned?
0.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. So how much did you spend per concert?
Per concert. Well, the first one, I didn't pay anything because it was a gift. The second one, I think I paid maybe $700 per ticket.
Okay, so it's $1,400 per ticket.
And then the third
or $1,400
one,
for the show.
Yeah, and then the third one was, well, it was free.
How was it free?
Thanks to Burch Law.
How was it free, Sarah?
Burch
Burch
Law.
Law had a
PLLC.
Thanks, Burch Law.
Thank you. That was a great time. Thank you.
So,
I really appreciated it.
So, and that's just the $1,400 you spent on the tickets, right? On that one concert, but you spent a whole lot of money, I am sure, in food, drinks, dress to make dressing the part, enough bracelets, glitter. I know the glitter and the sparkles cost a lot. You probably had a down payment for a house, is all I'm going to say, in glitter alone.
Very likely.
So what I'm saying is, I don't mean for you not to go see Taylor Swift, but just understand that the money is available if you want it to be.
So here,
Depends on how you
Robin,
spend
actually,
it.
I want them to chime in all, but I think this is a good thing to address for people because I struggle with this myself. It's not, I think a lot of people are on board with what you're saying, the investment. I've owned 3 houses now in my lifetime and, seeing the appreciation and if you have to refinance or do this or that, or sell, it's a nice chunk of change, a true investment. It's maintenance. And the reason why I can tell you Sam and Sarah are very adamant right now about that is because just this year alone, like their heads are spinning with the things that I've personally had to do at my home. And so I don't know what you have any, thoughts about. I mean, all of those things help towards the overall value of it. But, just curious because again, I'm on your side. Like I'm not trying to tell people not to own homes. I think it's like children. It's not for everybody. But I want to talk about whether you should have pools at a house. I also have very strong feelings about that. But what are your thoughts? Just in general, that's a real concern that you can overcome, but it's a reality.
And it's the house that you buy, right? Do I buy a brand new spanking house so that I don't have to do any major repairs for 10 years, hopefully? Or because I live in Texas, am I going to have storms like I did this last week and I'm going to have a tree through my house? I saw a picture of one, I think it was in Terrell, and it had the house literally in half. Or is it just, the yearly servicing on the HVAC, right?
Yeah.
$600 a year to make sure that the guy comes out and make sure the lines are clear and all of that sort of thing. And yes, that feels like a lot of money. But you're still paying rent to somebody, even though you can call them and they'll come fix it. You're still paying for that. It's just you're paying for it through your rent.
Yeah.
You're still paying for it. And you're not getting anything on the other side. Now, I don't know what personally you've had to do to your house recently, whether it's updates or required, because those are 2 different things, right? I've still got original bathrooms from 1990 something in my house. They are ugly, but I just don't want to spend the money to do anything about it right now. And I'll probably wait till right before I sell it. And then I'll go, damn, I should have done this 10 years ago. Right. Things happen. Yeah. But if you, now the big thing that's going to come up is because insurance companies right now, and this is a concern for homeowners. Insurance companies are no longer wanting to cover roofs like they did before, right? Because they are still recouping money from the freeze 3 years ago. Right. And so my personal example, I got a new roof on that house in 2010. So it's 14 years old. I bought the super duper shingle because I wanted to, make sure that I didn't get hail damage and all those things. I live in Coppell, which has a bubble. I pay extra taxes for that weather bubble to make sure that the hail doesn't hit my house. And we get so little hail. Again, we do have a bubble. I bet on one hand I can count in 10 years how much hail we've had. I've had roofers look at it. My roof is fine. There's nothing wrong with my roof. However, my insurance is going up because my roof is old.
Yeah.
It's old. I'm like, it's working. I'm not filing a claim.
Right.
But you're going to raise it because it's old. So what that means is probably they're not going to cover it as much, or the deductibles are going to go way up.
Right.
When you get, the hail pounds it. So it may cost you $10,000 or $20,000 every 10 to 20 years for a new roof.
Yeah. That's funny. I'm in the exact same. I was just having this conversation with a roofer because we have a little minor leak. So we had someone come out and we're getting that fixed. It's flashing, which sounds inappropriate to me, but apparently it's a real thing. Flashing and the stuff, right? See, they know what they're talking about and the other ones do. And it's the same thing. He's like, your roof is actually in really good condition. And I'm like, that actually really sucks for me because the roof I think is like about 12 years old right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm like, I will never pay extra for that super duper shingle again, because why? Give me the shittiest shingle you got.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to matter anyway.
Get me a jean covered shingle. Sam, what would that be called?
Jingle? Oh, jingle.
Yeah, a jingle.
Jingle. We had a whole episode, Robin. Well, hopefully it wasn't the whole episode, but there was an episode where we launched into talking about jean covered things, and it went too far, as it always does.
As it always does.
It's pretty great.
Jean covered shingles. Jingles.
A jingle.
There's probably a market for that. I would
probably
think.
Is. Yeah.
The HOAs won't let you have it though.
Yeah. I personally don't have an HOA, which they actually haven't mowed our yard in a couple weeks. And so I wanted to tell them that if I had an HOA, they probably would fine us by now. And I can't let my kids go out in the yard because I would lose them. Like
I would like to see an HOA try and fine anybody right now for long grass when we've had nothing but gallons of rain dropping on us daily.
Yeah, it's been pretty.
I will. Yeah.
And actually, so speaking of the recent storms and trees and everything, I actually want to make a very real parallel to what we're talking about to the idea of getting your estate plan, because you can't get it in an emergency, just like you can't get a homeowner's insurance policy in the middle of a hailstorm, right? It's like too late.
Right.
So last year, I think it was, we had, what are these tree specialists called? Arborists?
Arborists.
All right. So he comes out and he assesses this gorgeous oak tree that we have in the front of our home that we always get wrapped with holiday lights and everything like that. And basically, long story short, which is a Taylor Swift song, by the way.
I survived.
He's like, this tree is dying. And he said, now, mind you, this was like over a year ago. And he's like, one good storm and that's going to land on something. And so it ended up being like over $2,000 because I don't like where they cut the trees and they leave the stump. So I like to pay extra for them to grind them all up, so it was probably $2,000 here or there. And it's like, oh man, not only are we having to fork over a couple grand, but we're losing like this beautiful thing here. After last week's storm, I promise you that tree would be probably through this pod because that's right where it was. Or on our cars or something.
Yeah.
And so it's
and that's Mother Nature, right?
Right.
It's Mother Nature, and you can't predict a lot of these things. And so you don't know when the storm's going to hit. That's why you have a good team around you, right?
Right.
I have a problem with my roof. I know who to call. I send people to you all the time because I trust you that you know what you're talking about when somebody says, okay, my dad died, my mom has a will, but I think it was written when he wrote his 25, 30 years ago. Well, let's go talk to Lori and make sure that it's up to date. right? Are
Right.
all the things still in line? And you should do that with your home too, right? Shop your insurance. Make sure you've got the best coverage. What happens with insurance? They will raise or change something. You have no idea. Whether it's even your car insurance, right? And you just pay it. We pay it. Things are on auto pay. We don't pay real close attention because it's just a few dollars.
Right.
But they've raised a deductible or they've reduced a coverage or something like that. So you need to, this is all part of adulting, right? You've got to make sure, I know I'm horrible this way, but it is adulting. You've got to make sure that everything's still in line because nobody's going to do it for you.
Right.
Nobody, no insurance. State Farm ain't calling you saying, well, Lori, let me tell you, we've had some issues. There's a freeze, but so we're going to have to raise your rates. I know you haven't filed a claim at all. The freeze didn't hit you. No trees fell on your house, but we're going to go ahead and raise your rates and your deductible. They don't call you. It just happens.
Well, and isn't it disappointing that even you have this insurance, but even when something happens, you don't want to have to use it. So we actually had somebody, we won't mention names, but they worked at our home and they backed into our garage door, like went all the way through the garage.
Damn.
So just to cut to the chase here, we ended up claiming it on her car insurance because when we talked to our agent for our homeowners, between deductibles and how it would affect our rates and everything like that, it just ended up like, we'll let it affect their rates on their car insurance. It's already bad because there's lots of accidents happening there. Yeah. But
clearly, if she's backing in through a garage, this was not their first occurrence.
It was purely an, but anyway, but that's just an example of like, sometimes it's not even worth it to use it. And then it's like, why do we have it? Right. But no, I don't know too many people that question whether they have it. And funny enough, we actually use the comparison of homeowners insurance to getting a quality estate plan. Because some of the pushback we get is, well, that's just too expensive. I don't want to pay a few $1,000 for this. And Robin, right now, what would you say is like the average in North Texas homeowners insurance policy?
It's going to, how big's your house and how old is it, right? It's going to be
$3-4 grand.
Something like that. On your basic house, probably. Yeah.
For sure. At least that. And definitely could be much higher, but just to be fair. So that's something that people pay every single year. And guess what? When they sell that house, they don't get any sort of reimbursement. It just, thankfully you had it. Yeah. And then you're going to have to buy another policy on a new house and you do it every single year. And I would guess, I'm just but one measly homeowner. You're actually happy each year when you don't have a claim.
Sure,
right?
You
don't want to have the claim, right? So every single year,
because nothing bad happened to you then.
Right. But if you did have a claim, you just pointed this out. There's going to be a deductible. That could be several grand, if not in the tens of thousands. Yeah. Right. So what I like to do is you want to have a plan in place that's going to make things as easy as possible. It's going to carry out your wishes. It's going to reduce costs, reduce time, reduce heartache. Are you not willing to spend the equivalent of that same amount once, twice, maybe 3 times your entire life? And the biggest difference between homeowners insurance and estate plan is what? You may never need homeowners insurance.
But I can assure you, you're going to need the other one.
Right. So,
it's, and it's sad. It's sad, that when people, they don't want to talk about estate planning and wills. They just don't want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about their death and nobody wants to talk about, I don't want, even my own mom, when we were going through hers and I had to get her to do it, kicking and screaming because she doesn't own anything, right? She didn't have a house. She didn't have, and then, we're talking about the executor and, she goes, well, you two, but me and my sister. And you said, it's better to just have one. And Tracy's like, you do it. And all of a sudden, but my mom says to me, well, you make sure you're fair to your sister. And I'm like, all right, we'll make sure, that this lamp goes to the one that wants it.
Yep.
Right.
And nobody wants to talk about these things, right? They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. They don't want to talk about dying. It's a long way off. Well, I hate to tell you, of recently, I've lost 3 friends in their 60s. So you don't know we've all got the date. We just don't know the date. Nobody tells us what it is.
Right.
So to have this, it's just making it easier on everybody else. And when you've got an asset such as a house and or more than one, when you talked about, LLC, if you've got 10 rental houses, you need at least 10 LLCs.
Possibly.
Right? Because for every door, it needs its own LLC. Otherwise, somebody's coming after all your doors.
Yeah.
Rather than just the one. So it's, there's a lot to it. These are big things.
Yeah.
These are big things.
But if you want the good, you got to accept the adulting piece of it too, because it is great to own a home, and it is fun to, when you're going and looking, they're imagining what would go here and the schools and all, and that's so great. But there's no magic wand that just will only give you what you want, and you don't have to accept the consequences. And frankly, the reason why there's this yin and yang is because that gives you more value to it. If it was just easy and there's nothing to it, I look at our home, and as much as we've had to pour into it, it's like I'm proud of it. It's like this is an investment. This is our forever home, and that's been the calculation, Robin, with some of the things we've had to do is, do we do this or do we not do this, or do we do this, times 10, or do we just do this little fix? And it's like the more and more we look at this home, it's like, no, I'm going to die here. From all the repairs, but I'm going to die here.
But at the end of the day, I'm going out toes up, and that's the way this is going to be.
And so it's kind of like, something that we're proud of fixing. And so I don't want to end this without referring to pools. So I am big time on pools, big time. They are an absolute pain in the ass.
Yes.
They're horrible to deal with. And now I have kids, but before I had kids, I always felt like, this must be like having kids. Like if you really want one, all of the hardship stuff is worth it. And so that's how I've always looked at a pool. Like that is always like, no, I will not compromise on that. I want a home with a pool. But yes, so people will ask me what's it like having a pool? I'm like, it's terrible. As far as the maintenance and the things that can go wrong and this and that. But then when they ask, is it worth it? Like, oh yeah, are you kidding me? We're about to have a kick-ass summer where you come home from work and you just plop yourself in the pool, or it's Saturday and you just go in. Yes, it's awesome. It's awesome. Love having a pool, but it's a lot.
I'm the exact opposite. I was not even going to I wasn't looking at houses with a pool because I wasn't buying a house with a pool.
That would be me.
Wasn't going to do it. It's like a pet. You got to feed it, and you got to pet it, and you got to play with it, and you got to
louse it regularly.
Take care of it when you go out of town. No.
Watching my father-in-law struggle with their pool, fight with it. There was a really good couple of years where it was crystal clear, but he's out in East Texas. So the trees just do their yearly pollen dump. And so recently I was there for his 60th birthday. Some of my husband's siblings, they went to the craft store and got these, those foam flowers, and pretty much made lily pads to put into the pool.
Does it look like an algae filled?
That's one way to do it.
And it was also Survivor themed, so it fit the theme. Okay. But it was mostly because the pool was doing real great, and then all of a sudden spring hit, and we're like, well. Yeah. They're like, okay, let's just make this a pond. Let's move on with the show. And I don't know if they ever got the bricks out because they had to anchor the flowers down somehow. And
Lori's having a fit you put bricks in my pool and I'm coming after you.
They were sitting there so who's going to tell Dad that we put bricks in the pool?
Yeah.
It was a thing.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm sure, but if you do have kids, right? If you have kids, that probably makes the value of that pool for you go up, right? Now, as your kids grow up, their friends all come to your house. So now you know where your kids are.
Yeah.
right? You know where your 16-year-old is if she's out in the backyard versus
Our kids
somebody else's
organized
backyard.
Well, and you can see
parties.
their little wet footprints through your house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
on your hardwood
you know.
floors.
You just talked me out of a pool now. No, but we haven't. So we're wrapping up here. So Robin, two things. One, I don't know if there's any last thoughts that you have that you want to share. And two, how would someone be able to get a hold of you if they're like, this sounds like the world's most kick-ass realtor in the DFW area? I mean, you'd help anybody, right? But I mean, you're kind of restricted geographically. So, you know,
Yeah,
how
well,
would people reach out to you in any
I'm
party
licensed. My license takes me all the way to the borders of the great state of Texas, so I can do it. But there's
like
some things
Lori.
that won't make sense, right? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But I do know people. I've got really good realtor friends across the country, so I have that as well. You know, my big point with people are afraid to make that step, you know, or maybe they got that 3% interest, but their house really isn't working for them. And then they don't want to tell anybody that they gave up 3% for 6% because they think their friends will think they're crazy, but their house still isn't working for them. It doesn't matter. Find the house that's working for you. You'll never be able to change the price you paid for a house, but you can change the interest on the money that you're paying on that mortgage. But once you pay an extra 50 grand to a seller, they're in Hawaii vacationing on your 50 grand, but you can change that rate if you need to. So let's talk about what makes sense for you, because what makes sense to Lori is different for Sam, is different for me, you know, we're all very different and our finances are different. It doesn't matter what your neighbor got for their house or bought their house for, or what their interest rate is. That really doesn't matter because you don't know what their situation is. And it can be very different. So it all, just like you, it needs a conversation. It needs a conversation. So
Right.
I call it a strategy session. There's lots of ways to get a hold of me. I've got, you know, links to schedule. You can call me. You can find me on all the socials. You know, I'm pretty easy to find, and I am happy to just have a conversation to see what it is your goals are, where you want to be, whether you're kind of trying to downsize and get out of owning big houses, or you want to get your foot in the door in home ownership, and anything in between.
Awesome. And Sarah will make sure that when we promote this one, that we put your contact information in there. Right, Sarah?
1000%.
So you would say, you'd say, Robin, that your home ownership needs are as unique as your estate plan should be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very, very
as
well put.
unique.
Well, we want
As
to thank
unique.
you for being here. I would be remiss if I didn't check in with Sarah or Sam. Any parting thoughts that either of you have? Look at all the dead air.
A lot of
Sarah,
this, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, lots of dead air.
A lot of this went right over my head.
Same.
But that is okay because I don't think home ownership is for me, at least not for a very long time.
Yeah. And that's okay.
I aspire for the condo, apartment, high-rise life where maintenance is done for me.
Well, and that, you know what? And for some, that is what you want. Now, you know, we can have that conversation though, right?
Yeah.
I can't, you know, it's funny. People are afraid to meet with me because they're afraid I'm going to make them buy a house. I can't make you buy a house.
You can't make me do that.
I can't make you do that. And I'm not going to hate you if you don't want to. But I just, my thing is I want you to be educated. I want you to understand what it is. And if that is not you, and it may change. You could be, I don't know how old you look. You guys look a bit younger than me.
she's 40.
But I will say, you know, that could change in 5 years, right? Lives change in year to year. I've got some clients, they just want to live down in Farmers Market, and to buy one is out of their budget. So they rent, which personally, I think they're paying an outrageous amount of money for rent to live down there when they could probably save a couple bucks over a couple of years and then buy one. And then they could, you know, but it's not my bank account. I can't make them buy a house.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's good to have all the facts and to be able to debunk some of the misperceptions and the myths and be able to address some of the pros and cons. It's a factor of pros, cons, advantages, and considerations.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's
like,
in your biz, everybody needs a will. They won't all get it, but they really do need it, but not everybody's going to do it. You don't need to buy a house. Some people do, but it all depends on what your situation is. But everybody needs to get a will. And in that will, they need to tell people what to do with that house.
Right, for sure. Well, Robin, thank you so much again. You are our first guest. You kicked it off. I don't think any of them will be able to hold a candle to you. We might decide no more guests ever because it was just so great. You're so great. We appreciate you. And join us next time. Yes, absolutely. Join us next time, everybody, for another enthralling edition of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. Until then.